Good evening. Welcome to the Advanced Green Manufacturing Systems course, and I am Dr. Deepafule from IIT Kanpur. We are trying to complete the introduction lecture today, and earlier we have seen the major aspects of this course as the course dynamics, what is expected out of this course. So we decided, or we discussed what is expected, okay, and then we have already talked with significance of manufacturing, and we talked about globalization and world economy and how it impacted. Okay, we did this, and we also talked about the manufacturing, what is manufacturing, and the transformation process, okay, and why is this transformation process is important. And we also talked about the productivity and the need of sustainability in this regard. So these aspects were covered in the previous lecture, and now what we are going to talk about is the product life cycle. This will be today's agenda mainly, okay, and with this we will be completing our lecture for green manufacturing systems. So if you do a quick recap of what we have learned so far, traditionally we learned that traditional view of manufacturing, okay, this is something that we learned earlier. The traditional view of manufacturing. What is the traditional view of manufacturing? Conversion of raw materials into desirable products. Raw materials into desirable products. Okay. So the traditional view of the manufacturing is all about the conversion process of raw materials into desirable products, and we have already seen why this is a narrow focus approach, okay, because it only is focusing on the consumption approach. Okay. Now what we said is that now in the latest times, okay, it is insufficient to just convert raw materials into desirable products. Okay. In the present day world, this approach is not sufficient, okay, but this transformation from raw materials to finished product must be accomplished. You must be able to accomplish this, must be accomplished quickly, should be able to do it in a short time period, easily, okay, economically, cost effective way, and efficiently, okay, efficiently. So we just don't want to convert it from raw materials to desirable products. That is insufficient. It is not sufficient just to do the conversion, but this conversion or this transformation should be accomplished quickly, easily, economically, and efficiently. And why is this important? So that the resulting product is not only acceptable in quality by the customer, but also acceptable environmentally. So what we are saying here is that all these things need to be done, because the resulting product should not just be acceptable in quality by the customer. It is not just the customer acceptance of the product, but also the product should be acceptable environmentally, okay, or this is the new consideration. So we call this consideration as the sustainability consideration or the green consideration, okay, or green consideration. All right. So the entire manufacturing enterprise, okay. So this implies that entire manufacturing enterprise, what do the entire manufacturing enterprise should do? Enterprise should consider environment along with customer. Okay. So you are not just focusing alone on customer, you have to focus also on the environment along with the customer. So this means the new focus will be sustainability plus consumption. Okay. So earlier the manufacturing approach, this was the old approach, only old, okay, only consumption. This was the old approach. The new approach is you combine both of these, and these two together will give you the new approach. Combines sustainability or the environmental or the greenness. Okay. Sustainability, we kind of use in this course green as a collaborative term for this. Okay. All right. So now with this, one of the things that we ought to think about it is, there is a way to represent this whole manufacturing enterprise as a wheel. This wheel was originally proposed by, Society of Manufacturing Engineers. Okay. Manufacturing engineers. While this is kind of an all-encompassing wheels, but the most important part is that there are some aspects that need a relook into this. So as usual, we know the customer is the center point of this. Okay. So I am trying to do a triangle, and the three sides of the triangle, you have people or manpower, and you have organization, and you have teamwork. Okay. These three things, with the customer in the middle, they create an ecosystem in a way so that it interacts with the rest of the systems. Okay. So you have, what you have out of this is, it interacts with the outside system in many fashions. Okay, like these. And with the outside systems, we have things like product and processes. Okay. Then we have what we call as the manufacturing systems, and then we have also what we call as the customer support. Okay. And then we also have what we call as the infrastructure. Okay. So in this case, the product and processes, you can think about it as there are a lot of aspects that are associated with this. One of them is the business definition. What is your business going to do? Okay. What is the goal? Okay. Then the system design. Okay. Then the component design. How would you design the system, the product system, and the manufacturing system associated with this? Then you also have something called the Kaizen, or the continuous improvement, keep on improving. So these kind of things, the product and the process will have what is the goal of the product, or what is the goal of the process, what is the system, what is the product system, what is the support system, what are the components that are going to go into the product, and you keep on continuously improving the system, etc. So these are the major components that actually goes into the product and processes. In the manufacturing systems, the major part of this includes the material management. So this is like the inventory and other aspects of it. Okay. Then we also have the assembly and test. Okay. Then we have what we call as the fabrication of components and sub-assemblies, whatever you want to call those. Okay. Then we have the planning of operations or ops planning, operations planning. Okay. And then we also have is the resource planning. Okay. So this includes the materials management, will probably include the MRP, materials requirement planning. Resource planning will include the ERP. Okay. Operations planning will be also the business processes, re-engineering kind of aspects, fabrication, manufacturing. So all these aspects will go into the different aspects of the manufacturing system. Okay. Then we have something called as the customer support. So I'm going to do it this way, and the customer support will include things like the first one will be the global network. Okay. The global product process system network supporting this. Then you have something called as distribution. Okay. Then we have things like what we call as sales and promotion. Sales and promotion. Okay. Then we also have things like customer service. Okay. And we also have things like life cycle transitions. So what we basically talk about here is the global network. This could include the product or sub-assembly, okay, aspects. Distribution is the distribution of the product and the support system aspects. Sales and promotion is how the product is sold to the customer and what are the promotion ideas as per to this. Customer service, when the product is, this is during the use of the product. During the use of product. Okay. And life cycle transition is once the product has gone bad, so it is like upgrades, okay, or repair, etc., like this. Okay. So these are all part of what we call as the customer support activities that is related to the manufacturing aspects. Okay. And then the infrastructure aspects of it, we have things like, we start from here, things like people, so we can call it as man, okay, or we call people is another way to think about it is. Then you have, okay, materials, okay, then you have machine tools, okay, then you also have machines or resources, okay, other term for this is resources, machines is resources. Then we have information, okay, then we also have what we call as technology, okay, then we have suppliers, etc. Okay. So these are all etceteras. This is not the complete exhaustive list. This list continues. So what we are saying here is there is a customer in the middle of the system, okay, and the people, the teamwork and the organization really work together to satisfy the needs of the customer. In that, the focus of this is there one focus goes into the product and process focus, another is to the manufacturing system focus, another is a customer support focus, and the third one is the infrastructure focus. What we are talking about in this point is, one way you can think about all of this is, you could think about adding one more filter onto this one, okay, in this case, and this filter is what we want to call it as the concern for environment. No matter whatever is the task that you are going to do, okay. So I would rather like to change this into a green color in this portion, this concern to the environment, this filter, okay. We want to call this as this is a filter to be applied, okay. This filter need to be applied to every activity on the manufacturing enterprise field. Whether it is the manufacturing system, you have to think about making it green. Whether it's a product or process, you have to have an environmental concern to this. The customer support, you have to think environment or the sustainability in that part. Infrastructure, again, you cannot ignore any one of these into or you cannot say that okay, I will make only this as green and I will not do anything with the customer support. That just doesn't work. So what we are talking in this point is that all aspects of this system, this enterprise wheel, where whatever we are trying to do the customer into this, we also now need to focus on all activities related to manufacturing. So one of the things that you need to remember is all activities of manufacturing should apply the green filter in addition to the customer filter. Okay. So manufacturing is well tuned to apply the customer filter all the time. What we are now saying is it should also apply the green filter or the environment filter. Okay, and this will help in, okay, once you think about it, such a filter will need the help from, okay, so to apply a green filter, such a green filter will need the help from, who are the people where you require the help from? You will require the help from employee, so the employee's help is required. Then another help is required from the investor, okay, the person who puts in the money. It requires help from the community. It requires help from the regulatory bodies. It also requires help from the social responsibilities, okay, and this is something like CSR and other things called corporate social responsibilities, but the general social awareness and other things. Then ethical outlook, okay, so like for example is an organization, and we will anyway talk about these kind of things. All these filters will together help us to achieve environmental consciousness, okay, which will translate to what we call as green manufacturing. Okay, so our job is not just producing the product green or not just focusing on green on the manufacturing tangent alone. So what we are talking here is that not just this point. We are not just focusing on this aspect. Every aspect of it is considered. This green manufacturing is all aspects of the manufacturing enterprise. Okay, but in this class we will be mostly focusing on the manufacturing system as such, because that is the lowest hanging fruit. But other things, okay, other aspects of manufacturing enterprise also need to be addressed in this regard. Okay, now we will get into the last and most another part of this discussion, which will come later towards in the class, will be the product life cycle. Okay, and I am going to give you a very crude definition of the product life cycle at this time period, and we will talk about the product life cycle much later in the course. But the first part, the old definition or the traditional definition, I don't want to call it as the old, that's the wrong way to do it. I want to call it as the traditional definition. Okay, traditional viewpoint. So the product life cycle in the traditional viewpoint always have been called as the time period. The product life cycle is defined as a time period between conceiving a product and the point at which manufacturing it is no longer profitable is defined as the product life cycle. Okay. So, the traditional approach of the product life cycle is that the time from which you conceive a product, okay, you think through a product or you conceive the product in your mind or in sketches or drawing, something like that, to the point at which the manufacturing is no longer profitable. If you are making this product, if you are mass producing this, is no longer profitable, then it is known as the product life cycle. So, if you think about this as a graph system, most of the graphs will tell you this. The x axis will have time on it, okay, and the y axis will have, okay, sales volume in it. Typically, this is how product life cycle has been traditionally defined. And if you think about drawing a product life cycle, it kind of is drawn like this. Okay. So, if this is, let's say, I call this as, for the time being, let me call as product A. Okay. If this is the life cycle of the product A, so the initial part of it, okay, so the first part of it, we call it as this much portion is called as the introduction of product. Okay, the introduction phase. Then is the second part of it is called as the, up to this area is called as the, let me call it as the growth phase. Okay. Then to this component, before it starts declining, you can call it as the maturity phase. Okay. The rest of it is called as the decline of the product. Okay. So, this point where it is no longer economically viable, okay, or no longer profitable to manufacture, this is called as the product life cycle. So, this is for that particular product called product A. Okay. Now, the same thing, their company can have another product which might have a behavior something like this. Okay. So, this is like somewhere like you have the introduction. So, this is the introduction of B, okay, introduction of the product B. So, let me call this as product B, okay, and this is kind of the growth phase, okay, growth phase of the B, the product B, and this is a long maturity phase somewhere like this, okay, maturity of B, and this is the decline of B. Okay. So, the curve might give you different shapes, but the idea is that you can kind of come up with these 4 unique aspects of a product. Okay. So, the introduction phase is when the product is introduced into market. After conceiving, design, prototype, test and manufacture. Okay. So, the product is initially introduced into the market, okay, after the consumption phase or conceiving phase. Then comes is the growth phase. Okay. Growth phase is where know-how of the product, knowledge of the product, knowledge about the product is available to the customer. Okay. It is available to the customer and the sales grow. So, at this phase, the people get to know more about the product, the knowledge of the product gets percolated in the market and it becomes available to the customer, and the sales figures will start growing up. Then it reaches what you call as a maturity phase. Okay. This is where the demand and supply of the product is almost similar, okay, or they are matched, where this product has reached its maturity. And then you called as a decline, where, okay, customer interest in the product, reduces and demand falls. So, if the demand falls, what happens? The sales will also fall, demand falls. Okay. So, this is the traditional, this is what we call as the traditional outlook of the product life cycle. Okay. The current outlook is more like you have like a design, okay, or what we call as, even instead of the design, we call it as the product planning. Okay. The product planning, then you go through what you call as the design, okay, and then you go through what you call as manufacturing, okay, then we go through what we call as support, okay, and with the support this information goes into what we call as product planning. So, what you end up trying to do it is you are trying to ensure that the life cycle of the product. So, this whole thing, this is where at this point what we never had is rarely a cycle was there in the earlier definition. Now, this actually results in a cycle. Okay. So, the idea is that when your product, the people are the customer is using the product, the information that is gone into the usage of the product from the feedback of the customer goes back into product planning, so that the second time through. So, if you think about the first time through as red color, these aspects, the second time through, the second revision of it will probably come across as the second revision like this, okay, and it will continue like this. And maybe at some point of time you might have, during some place you might have a spin-off of a new product. Okay. So, like there are many scenarios where these kind of approaches has happened. We will look into some of those cases as later down the road, but such kind of an approach where the feedback going back into, so that the life cycle of the product is enhanced. Okay. So, this is the modern outlook of it. There is an environmental angle that we have not talked about this in this, which will come later down the road, but that is a discussion for a later part of this course. So, with this our introductory part of this course is pretty much over, and what we will start now getting into is the second major component of this course, which as I discussed in the beginning itself is called the optimization. So, the next lecture, the third lecture, will be on introduction to the optimization, and also how do you model a problem which is of complicated in nature, where you require you need to look into a lot of variables and optimize them, so that you are actually doing something in the most sustainable fashion. So, you need to learn little bit basics of optimization to actually implement sustainability. So, the next lectures are all about the optimization. Meanwhile, continue reading the topics, and thank you for your patient listening. Good luck.